Hi, I'm Brother Jake. Now, there are a lot of people out there who say the Mormons don't like people that are suffering from same-sex attraction, but that's not true at all. Let me explain. I mean, sure, there have been a few times when prophets and apostles had said stuff that might not seem super positive about those type of people, like this.
Homosexuality is an ugly sin. The ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah are symbols of wretched wickedness, more especially related to their perversion.
Or this.
Some suppose that they were preset and cannot overcome what they feel are inborn tendencies toward the impure and the unnatural. Not so. Why would our Heavenly Father do that to anyone?
But the reality is that we totally love people who are same-sex attracted. And I bet having to deal with all that being same-sex attracted and whatnot, it's super hard. But there's this thing called the law of chastity, which I've talked about before. And that's where God commanded that doing stuff like having, sex with somebody you're not married to is almost as bad as murdering somebody. And that applies to everyone. So it's not like we're singling same-sex attracted people out or anything. We're just saying that they have to live the law of chastity just like everyone else. So that's it. Problem solved. Well, kind of. I mean, I guess you could say that there's some difference in how the law of chastity works for people who are gay because of one teeny tiny thing, which is that while there's some opportunity for normal people to experience the dozens of avenues of romantic and emotional validation that can be pursued before marriage, like flirting or going on dates or hugging or kissing or holding hands or cuddling, as well as a fully sexual relationship with someone to whom they're attracted after marriage, there's really no acceptable way for gay people to act on their sex drive ever in any way at all, because while we totally don't hate gay people, like I said, we're really not into people, acting gay. But that's just because we're super big fans of traditional marriage, and we think that's the only type of marriage that should be legally allowed. Now, at this point, you might be wondering what exactly it is that makes a marriage traditional. Like, is it the tradition to marry for love rather than the earlier non-traditional tradition of marrying for economic or political reasons? Or is it the tradition of committing to sexual fidelity with your spouse? Or is it the tradition of promising to support each other in sickness and health and care for any dependents that might come along? Well, no. I mean, those are all good things, don't get me wrong, but the thing that really makes a marriage traditional comes down to the genders of the people in it. See, a traditional marriage needs a man and a woman, and we know that because in the biblical account of the creation, it only mentions a man and a woman, and obviously anything not specifically mentioned in that story must be stuff that God doesn't like. After all, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and his really good friend Patrick, who always wears cardigans and for some reason is in all of Adam's Christmas cards. And sure, it might seem a bit shaky to adhere to such strict literalism for that particular passage, since that part of the Bible also includes a talking snake, a fruit that could grant you knowledge just by eating it, and a magical garden where nothing ever died. Oh, plus, if we are going by the every type of marriage not mentioned in the Adam and Eve story is out of bounds idea, that puts Mormons in a bit of an awkward position, since we used to practice, and technically still do in our temples, which I talked about in another video, a form of marriage that includes one man and multiple women, but that's just for special occasions when God really needs it, like with Abraham or Joseph Smith or Brigham Young. The bottom line is that although there are people who are saying that it's okay for a marriage to have two men or like two women with no man at all, I guess, in order to be traditional, a marriage needs at least one, but sometimes more women, and one and only one man. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, but reducing the definition of traditional marriage to an issue of gender rather than focusing on arguably more important elements of the institution like the long-term commitment of fidelity and love is incredibly simplistic and short-sighted, but we're not making the rules, God is. And although the perception of the institution of marriage has shifted significantly over history from being primarily an arranged union used to transfer property or political power to the modern notion of a mutual declaration of love and commitment, we're 100% positive that having the correct number of men and women is definitely the one thing that makes traditional marriage, well, traditional. And yes, even if we do accept that totally airtight premise for establishing what a traditional marriage is, it may still kind of seem like a violation of the separation of church and state to use religious conviction as a basis for maintaining laws that restrict the type of unions the state recognizes. But like I said in an earlier video, this is a Christian nation, so it's totally cool to enact public policy based on Christian theology. The thing you need to understand here is that traditional marriage is like super important for society, and just like it says in our proclamation on the family, any changes to traditional marriage will have huge negative consequences, especially for children. See, the most obvious problem with letting people of the same gender get married is because they can't have kids, since you need a man and a woman to make a child, and that's not me being mean or anything, that's just science. I mean, yeah, reducing the purpose of marriage strictly down to biological reproduction might seem a tad inconsistent, since by that same logic, we should probably stop granting heterosexual marriages to couples who are elderly or infertile, but it goes beyond just having kids, it's about raising them too.
Unmarried mothers have massive challenges, and the evidence is clear that their children are at a significant disadvantage when compared with children raised by married parents. We should assume the same disadvantages for children raised by couples of the same gender.
Exactly. Children born to single parents have big disadvantages, and extrapolating that those disadvantages will apply to children raised by two parents of the same gender is totally logical, since the difficulties of being a single parent don't stem from the overwhelming correlation between single parenthood and poverty or low education or lack of resources. It's all because a single parent household only has one gender in it. And since, like I've talked about before, men and women have divinely mandated separate but equal family roles that just so happen to align with 20th century gender ideals, and since the value of each parent's contribution to the complex and arduous process of child rearing can be primarily accounted for by the anatomy they were born with, obviously children in a home with parents with the same parts will be lacking the advantages and completeness that they would have had if their parents had different parts. Anyway, the other big problem with same-sex marriage is that if it becomes legal, it'll kind of make it so that not as many people get normal married, and I definitely have well-reasoned points for saying that. I mean, sure, it might seem a tiny bit strange for me to argue that allowing consenting adults of the same gender to enter a state-sponsored legal agreement that was historically only available to adults of the opposite gender is going to somehow ruin that agreement for the non-gay people, since the people getting gay married are, I've been told, actually gay, so it's not like they'd be getting married to people of the opposite gender anyway. But hear me out. If gay marriage is legal, maybe more people will become gay, so then some people who would have gotten normal married won't. And yeah, saying that kind of flies in the face of a large and ongoing body of research that indicates that pretty much everyone who self-identifies as gay doesn't really choose to be attracted to people of the same gender in the same way that pretty much all the non-gay people don't choose to be attracted to people of the opposite gender. But think about it. There are way more gay people out there than there were like 100 years ago. I mean, sure, that might just be due to a societal trend toward removing the stigma against homosexuality over the past century that has allowed gay people to feel more comfortable about admitting that they're gay instead of just hiding it, getting normal married, and then living out nice, quiet, sexually dysfunctional lives. So it might not be that people are being like converted to gayism or whatever, so much as that a larger percentage of people who are already gay are just being more open about it. But it's like this. Imagine you have a pie, like a beautiful, perfect, traditional pie. But then this kid named Kevin comes up and he's like, I have a pie too. But it's like, it has like ice cream in it and the crust is made out of cookies or something. It's just not the same. The thing is that Kevin having that thing and calling it a pie just makes the pie you're eating not as good, because the pie is pie. And if it's not pie, then it's something else. And what he has isn't pie, man. It's just not. And if that's a pie, who's to say that this isn't a pie? Or this? Or this? And pretty soon, everyone's just walking around with whatever they want, calling it pie, until it's like the word pie doesn't mean anything anymore. So what's the point of having any pie at all? And then the pie is ruined for everybody. It's just wrong, and it's unnatural, and it's gross! I mean, it's not gross. We really don't hate gay people at all. I swear. We even have a website about how much we don't hate gays. So there you go. It's not natural. I mean, yeah, homosexual interaction is actually surprisingly common in the animal kingdom, but it's like this.
People inquire about our position on those who consider themselves so-called gays and lesbians. My response is that we love them as sons and daughters of God. They may have certain inclinations which are powerful and which may be difficult to control. Most people have inclinations of one kind or another at various times.
Exactly. We love gay people, but we were put on this earth to be tested, and everyone's got their own temptations and difficulties that they have to work through. Say, for example, there was a guy who was like a super kleptomaniac, just like overcome with a desire to steal stuff. But since stealing is wrong, he has to resist that temptation for his whole life. But if he does, after he dies, he'll be cured of wanting to do all the bad stuff, and he'll get to go to super VIP heaven and do cool God stuff. It's the same thing with gay people. Sure, being born in a gay body is super hard, no question about it. And we're not saying that you can be changed through reparative therapy or anything. Well, not anymore, anyway. We're just saying that if gay people just hang on and keep the law of chastity in this life, they'll be able to get resurrected in a not gay body and get married to, I don't know, some lady who never got married and is just like hanging out, I guess. And unless the gay person was a lady, then she'd probably get like married to some super righteous dude as one of his wives. But anyway, God will figure it all out. The point is that if they just keep the commandments, they can get into super VIP heaven just like anybody. Now, at this point, you might be saying, but equating something as fundamental to somebody's personality as sexual identity and the desire for intimacy and connection with a disorder with such obvious social harms and selfish motivation as kleptomania trivializes the sacrifice of complete and utter lifelong celibacy that gay Mormons are being asked to make, but it's super VIP heaven. Think about it. It's like, what, 70, 80 years of constantly repressing the desire for romance and companionship and family for like a bazillion years of doing cool God stuff with somebody you got paired up with from among the righteous loners left over after death. It's totally worth it. Eternal perspective, man. So you see, we don't hate gay people. We just love families.